I just want to mention we're doing very well in terms of the summit with North Korea. Looks like it's going along very well. As you know, there are meetings going on as we speak in a certain location, which I won't name. We're looking at June 12th in Singapore. That hasn't changed.
I think it's possible to have a constructive and positive summit, and I certainly prefer President Trump's choice now of diplomacy over threatening fire and fury.
I'd love to see them denuclearize. I'm not very optimistic about that.
So the on again, off again, maybe on again North Korea summit. With that, let's bring in our panel. Tom Rogan, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. Karen Tumulty, opinion writer for the Washington Post, and Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. Molly, your thoughts on where we are with whether or not this summit's going to happen on or around June 12th?
Well, it would certainly be amazing if we could make that June 12th meeting, in part because we just learned last week that we haven't had a lot of good discussions with North Korea about the terms of what would be discussed at a summit. And there is good reason to be skeptical about North Korea because we have had so many times of meeting with them, of them promising not to proceed with their nuclear ambitions, only to have them break their word. Now that they have finally achieved their long-held goal of nuclearization, I think we have a lot that we need to learn about what they hope to get in exchange for their claim that they will denuclearize.
Speaking of that, we've heard some bipartisan skepticism or concern from lawmakers. Let's take a listen.
It's right out of the North Korean playbook. We're into 3 generations of that playbook now. Act like you want to negotiate, then come up with some outlandish view of what that negotiation means and try to wind up with early benefits to your side and not following through on what you've agreed to do.
Twice before, North Korea, under Kim Jong-un's father, committed to full denuclearization in 6-party talks in 2005 and 2007, as Senator Blunt just referenced, only to then change their tune.
So while a lot of folks from both parties favor talking, there is at least caution, right, Karen?
I think, too, this go-round, after we saw the president sort of run up to this once before, the way it's going about looks a lot more professional than the first time. The president is actually letting the pros, his foreign policy team, get in there and kind of lay the groundwork. There's a lot more message discipline coming out of this administration. No premature talk of Nobel Prizes this time. And I think also, one of the things that's going to be really important here is kind of setting some realistic expectations for these talks, as opposed to thinking that somehow, you know, by the force of his personality, President Trump can bring about full denuclearization, you know, in his first meeting.
Is the most likely scenario, Tom, they come out of a meeting and say, we've had a good discussion, we've made some steps toward resolving this issue, now we're going to continue working it? Is that most likely?
I think that's the ideal scenario for the Chinese and the North Koreans, the ideal scenario for President Trump. And I think you see this in terms of how the administration is framing it, is to at least get something immediately out of that summit, whether that be a limited inspections trip by the IAEA into North Korea, whether it be a declaration in terms of the ballistic missile stuff that we know they've been doing on the warhead research, something tangible. And if I think the good thing about this, that skepticism rendering that American expectation of something tangible, means that if you don't get something tangible, then President Trump will go back to the sort of maximum pressure approach, because it will be pretty clear that the North Koreans are doing what they have done before, which is to say playing games.
The South Korean president talked about the message he was delivering over the weekend to the North Koreans. Take a listen to this.
I explained to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un the results of my meeting with U.S. President Trump from last week, and delivered the message that President Trump has a strong will for putting an end to hostile relations and help achieve economic prosperity, provided Chairman Kim makes a decision for complete denuclearization and carries it out.
So there was a lot of speculation this past week that President Moon was coming here and would be taking a message with him. Now it sounds like he did deliver a message, right, Tom?
Yes, I think that's true. I also think the Chinese here, there has been a flip, that the Chinese were trying to test the waters here with President Trump by telling the North Koreans play games. And now that in the context of President Trump playing hardball with them on trade, they want U.S. concessions in the South China Sea as part of their quid pro quo for pressuring Pyongyang. President Trump is playing that game of unpredictability. I mean, this is the one issue I do think where the Twitter feed and the slight, strangeness of it all serves a positive interest because it throws foreign nations who have a different political structure to our own off balance in terms of their perception of what Trump might do.
And Karen, we know an advance team from the U.S. went to North Korea to meet to talk about this, so it sounds like they're hopeful.
And again, like I said, they're sending the pros in to lay the groundwork. But I think President Moon has been, in a lot of ways, the most interesting person to watch in all of this. He does seem to be kind of the most skillful at kind of reading all the interests and sort of bringing everybody along.
Molly, how do you think the next couple of weeks play out with this?
Well, I'm not sure, but I just want to say I think it's also worth pointing out that it wasn't that the U.S. was not eager to meet or that the U.S. wasn't trying to make terms for what the summit would be, but that North Korea wasn't showing up to these.
But it was also the president sort of getting out of his own foreign policy team. In fact, by announcing this meeting before he even discussed with his own foreign policy team what he was going to do, that really did kind of limit the amount of groundwork that could be done.
Whether you think it's limiting or whether you think that kind of pressure is actually helpful. I mean, you're seeing also South Korea is putting a lot of pressure on people. They're very eager to move things forward. And you're seeing this. I mean, I think even in President Trump's letter last week, you got a sense he said something like, we were told by South Korea that you wanted to meet. We were told by South Korea that North Korea wanted to meet. He kind of suggested that maybe they weren't confident in what South Korea was saying. There has been so much that has been communicated through South Korea. And even today, they're showing such eagerness. I think that's interesting. This is clearly in their interest to get a deal going. Sure. Also, President Trump talked with Abe today. Japan is very interested in getting things going. China, as Tom points out, I think is the interesting party here. We're not going to get a deal unless they're on board. I don't think we've learned a lot or enough yet about what their interests are or what they hope to accomplish.